Hello, my name is Georgina Rose. I'm a perennialist, polytheist, and thelemite, and welcome back to Pagan Perspectives by Georgina Rose. This is a podcast where allegedly I take the mundane topics that we deal with in our day-to-day lives and I give a esoteric, pagan, and mystical perspective on those issues that we can basically be happier and live more fulfilling lives in this chaotic world that we all live in. Now, what has become of this podcast is it kind of has devolved into me yapping about various occult topics and esoteric topics, and I'm cool with that. In this episode, we're gonna basically do that. We're gonna talk about a topic I've been thinking about, and I think I'm gonna call this episode "The Problems with True Will." So, what I mean by that is, you guys heard what I am. I'm perennialist, polytheist, and thelemite. We're gonna really emphasize that last one, the thelemite. I have been involved with Thelema for a really long time. I mean, I've been a practitioner. I've been doing rituals every day for like 8 years. I think I might be, I think if I count up like the years, like, the first like 2 years of my practice, I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't really have a path. I mean, it probably is about a decade if I add like everything up. It probably does start to get near that. Now, the first few years of me exploring spirituality, I wasn't doing it very well, to be completely honest, but about 8 years of like real occultism is kind of under my belt at this point. And I would say the majority of that time, I've been within Thelema and Thelema adjacent spaces. And I think the way Thelemites talk about true will is often very simplistic. And I'm gonna say I think I've kind of been part of the problem. I think the way in the past I've talked about true will has been simplified. Like, I think I, to some extent, have perpetrated this problem. And that is basically Thelemites talking about true will in a really simplistic way, a way that is detached from, the principles of Thelema, and in a way that doesn't really let people know what true will really is. So in this podcast, I made a list of all the common concerns, issues, critiques, basically all the problems with true will, the reason why it's harder to do than people say, and the arguments, that people have against true will when they hear about it, to try to help people understand what true will really is. Now, even after really, like, when I was writing this outline, it was like I was putting myself on like a jury. Like, if you ever played a classical instrument, like, the cello or something, like they give you those juries where like, you're in front of everyone and they're asking all these questions. Like basically I did that to myself when I was writing the outline of this. Like, I really spent a lot of time, like, really interrogating these problems with true will. And even after doing that, I mean, I spent a long time preparing this episode. I kind of came to the conclusion that true will is still good. I still support true will. And so in a sense, this is kind of me defending true will against everyone. I created these list of problems out of things other people have said. Like, I didn't just come up with these things, out of my own ass. Like, there were things, I've been talking about Thelema publicly for 5 years now, right? I've been talking about Thelema for a long time in the public sphere, and I've been asked all of these questions pretty much by various people. I've had them thrown against me when I have done debates. I'm not like a debate bro, so I haven't really done many debates, but I have tried them out. And these were questions that were leveraged against me. And, even outside of questions being thrown against true will, when people come to me and they, ask for advice, a lot of the times people are struggling with true will. They're struggling with the concept of true will. They're struggling with following their true will. These are the problems they're having. So before we get into that, I do think it's worth defining what true will is. I think there's a simple definition. I think there's more complicated definitions. So the simple definition of true will is that true will is basically following your like highest purpose, right? That's like the simple version. Like, basically, like, you have a way you're meant to be living, and when you're living that way, you're following your true will, and when you follow your true will, you'll be happy, you'll be satisfied, and you'll be moving in a positive direction. Like, that's kind of the simple understanding of true will. To understand it a little bit deeper and to get what we're really talking about, I think we need to understand what true will leads to, because basically true will is following your life purpose. That's a big part of it. But the purpose of true will is not just to simply like follow your passions, it's to follow your life purpose in order to, right? There's an in order to at the end of true will. The goal of true will is to help you accomplish the great work. That's the actual purpose of it. True will is the state that you live within that can allow you to get to a point where you can accomplish the great work. And the great work is very clearly defined. The great work is dissolution into the Godhead. It's breaking the cycle of samsara. It's nirvana. It's unity with God. That is what the great work is. The great work is completely dissolving the self, annihilating the self into the cup, and becoming one with divinity, right? That's the true true great work. And that's the end goal of true will. We follow our true will so that one day we can complete the great work. Now, if you can complete the great work alive or in death, I think that's a big argument. I think I've said before, to truly 100% annihilate into divinity in the most extreme and fullest extent, it kind of would have to be something that happens after this life. But it is possible to get very close within your current life. And we should strive towards that. Even if you can't accomplish the full great work while alive, it's still worth moving, closer towards it, because even a little bit of divinity is better than none. And when you live aligned with your true will, when you really are embodying true will, you are happier, right? You are doing better. You are more fulfilled. You are feeling better. You're feeling stronger. You're feeling inspired. Like true will really is a way to become happy, and perhaps the only way you can be happy, because you are not, living your purpose that you are meant to be living if you are not living your true will. Now, that, a lot of people hear that and they kind of get a number of assumptions about what true will must be, or, they kind of oversimplify it. And I think to fully grasp how to get to your true will, I think we need to explore how that's done. So Thelema has pretty explicit instructions, not destructions, on how you actually know your true will. So a lot of people, when they hear this true will concept, they go, okay, so that means I just need to do a lot of contemplation. Like if I stare at my mirror enough, like eventually I'll figure out my true will. Eventually I'll get it. And then all I need to do is switch life paths. Like maybe I need to quit my job and, get a better job or something. And then I'm doing true well. And then eventually, I'll escape samsara and I'll be one with God. It's actually a bit more complicated than that, because true will has to be discovered, right? It has to be something that is found, right? You do not, when you are new on your journey, know your true will. A lot of people, when they hear true will, they can kind of guess what it would be. Like for some people, they feel really called to motherhood and they're like, okay, well then being like a mother is my true will. Or maybe they really love helping people, right? Like I know some people who love to help people and they're like, okay, well then my true will is to help people. So I should just become like a counselor. And if I become a counselor, then I found my true will, I'm good. No, it's a lot harder than that. And I think true will is something people tend to be kind of completely lost on. Like they can answer the question. If I ask someone like in a journal prompt, I explain that short bit and I'm like, okay, well, journal what you think your true will is. They'll have an answer. Most people, when they hear what is your true will, they don't feel 100% lost. They're like, okay, well, there's some things that I do think are there. Like I need a partner. I need, stability. I need to quit drinking. Like those type of thoughts tend to come to people. But even that, I mean, typically those thoughts, I will say, are in the right direction, but there's typically things that are missing. And that's why, to actually discover your true will and be sure that's your true will, you need to have divine contact. So then that kind of raises, what is true will? Because a lot of people, when they hear true will as a concept, they think it's this radical philosophy of complete autonomy. Like the big slogan that Crowley would say is, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. And that quote, specifically the do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, has been misinterpreted as a complete statement that means do whatever you want, be reckless, have the life you want to live, nothing matters. Kind of like YOLO. Some people have turned that statement into basically a metaphysical YOLO. And actually, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law is an incredibly restrictive statement. I don't think people realize that that's a very, very restrictive idea, because will is discovered through spiritual revelation. Aleister Crowley was very, very clear about this. So that means that our will is not our choice. And I think that's a hard pill for people to swallow. Your will is not a choice you make. Now, the choice to follow your will or not, that is your choice. And you do have that radical autonomy over that. You know what I mean? You are sovereign in that way. You are not obligated to. There is no cop that's going to come to you and arrest you spiritually if you don't follow your true will, right? Thelema does not have the same concept of sin. If you're defying your will, I mean, in a sense, you are kind of doing a thelemic sin, but there's no, spiritual cop coming to arrest you. You're not going to burn if you ignore your true will, right? But you won't be as happy. So true will, basically when you're following your true will, it is your life purpose, but people resist it very frequently and they don't know what it is. So basically, to make sure your true will is correct, you want to have divine contact, which that means that your true will is not your choice at all. Your true will is something that is given to you by divinity that you have to discover, right? True will is essentially a revelation, or as the New Agers say, a download that you have to have. You do not, before spiritual contact, know your true will for sure. You probably have some ideas, right? If you do that journaling prompt, right, of like, what is my true will after hearing a brief explanation of it, you're going to have some answers. And some of those are probably right. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that type of contemplation. You shouldn't do that type of discovery. You should do that type of discovery, but that's not going to give you the full answer. It's not going to give you all the information you need in order to truly accomplish the great work. You need to dive deeper and deeper. So then it raises another question of, okay, so you need to talk to the divine to get your true will. That is what this entire knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel thing, which I'll get to in a second, sort of points to. And that means that divinity externally must exist. Okay, so now we're going to get into some thelemic debates. I'm going to be a little polarizing. True will and complete psychological paradigm don't work together. Okay, I have criticized the psych paradigm before. I also, I want to be clear, do not think you need to agree with me on everything. You can listen to my podcast and think I'm wrong and just find it interesting. That's cool. I'm not trying to, proselytize people. I'm not trying to get everyone to agree with me. I don't care if you disagree with me. You know what I mean? I gain nothing if you start to agree with me, but I do feel like I should share my opinion because I think it can help people think. But the psychological paradigm, this is a big debate within occultism, is basically like, is the occult external or internal? Is it all your psychology and is it all external? And I have an entire podcast episode on that debate on pagan perspective. So if you, just had that thought and you're curious more about that, like definitely listen to that episode. It's a whole hour where I explore, basically the arguments for both, the problems with both, and kind of the middle. I think a lot of people in reality kind of feel more like in the middle. Like I've said, my personal belief is that things are external, but since we're humans, things filter through the limitations and capacity of the human mind. So inherently, our psychology does play a big role, but these things do externally exist despite that. So it is real, but we are filtering it through our own minds and our own limited capacity because we are not, like the highest. Look, there's a spark of divinity within humanity, right? We have a spark of divinity within us. We are stars, but we're not, like living and hanging out in Kether. Okay, we're just not, and we cannot fully understand absolutely everything. We're kind of limited to some extent. So our psychology is really, really important when it comes to basically how we process our spiritual experiences. So that's my belief. Now, some people will say it's entirely external and that our psychology has no role to play. And then there are a lot of people who say that it's all internal, right? Like it's all within your own psychology, it's all within your mind. This is basically just like fancy, spicy psychology. And I really reject that belief. And I actually fundamentally don't think Thelema and that belief make any sense together. Because, okay, if it is all within your mind, why are you doing any of this to discover your true will? Like this would be a really completely not efficient way to figure out your true will. Like this would be a lot of unnecessary work. Like if it is just within your mind, why on earth are you doing holy guardian angel work? Like holy guardian angel work is like really intense, and I'll get to that in a second, but like it's kind of like a bit overkill if it is within all your mind, right? I mean, maybe you just like the ceremonial magic ritual, maybe you like the theatrical aspects of it. I mean, maybe, but I think it's like a really inefficient way to get your goals if it is entirely psychological. Like I don't think ceremonial magic would make that much sense if it is all psychological. Just like it's a lot of work, especially if you're doing like older systems like Solomonic magic or even something like Enochian. Like that's a lot of work. And I also think eventually, if you do follow the psychological paradigm, once you sort of advance past a certain point, it does start to limit your growth, right? It starts to limit what you can do. And what happens eventually is people who get really into the psych paradigm and they kind of cling to that even as they advance, they start developing like weird like workarounds to how they can, maintain attachments to the psych paradigm, even when, external things kind of like seem to be arguing against that. Like they'll be like, well, we just don't know how big our mind is. Our mind, it can be something completely beyond the material. Like what if our mind is also external? And at that point, like you're not even arguing for the psych paradigm. Like you basically are arguing that the mind is part of the collective oneness, which is the metaphysics of it, right? The metaphysics of it is that there is no separation. Everything is an emanation of the divine, all is one, right? That kind of monistic idea is fundamentally true. And, if that's your argument for the psych paradigm, then I don't think that is the psych paradigm after a certain point. I think you're just arguing for connectedness and like the idea of the collective unconscious. Anyways, regardless, Crowley and Thelema argues that to truly know your true will, you have to have knowledge and conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel, which is conversation with an external magical being. Okay, so the Holy Guardian Angel is a specific sort of metaphysical being that is tied to you, that is tethering you to the divine. I think people will argue about the nature of the HGA a lot too. Some people will say it's kind of like part of you. Some people will say it's like your super ego. Some people say it's an entirely external being. I find a really good parallel to the HGA. Now, not exactly the same, but I think there's a little bit of a parallel. It comes from the Islamic world. So within Islam, there is a spirit known as the Qareen. The Qareen is a spiritual double. So basically, within Islamic theology, everyone has a Qareen, and this Qareen basically is a direct spiritual body that's attached to them. And if you're, this is where it varies. Thelema does not hold this idea, but this is part of the Islamic idea that basically like the double reflects who you are and influences who you are, and vice versa. So like if you're a really sinful person, your Qareen is really negative and is essentially like a negative spiritual being attached to you, or even a shaitan, which means devil. But if you're like a really holy and pious being, your Qareen is like this, pious guardian spirit who's basically the HGA, right? Like a pious Qareen is kind of really similar to the HGA idea. Muhammad actually said that he got his Qareen to be so pious, he taught his Qareen the Islamic prayer process. Like he taught the Qareen to say Shahada and to do Salat. Like it's really, really interesting. I really recommend looking into Qareen lore. Like it's really, really fascinating. And actually the Qareen rituals, like there are rituals to contact your Qareen within Jinn magic. And a lot of those rituals look a little bit similar to Holy Guardian Angel rituals. So that's just kind of like an interesting food for thought. But I think of, the HGA and the Qareen, where they parallel is the HGA is kind of like a spiritual double, right? The HGA is not like a guardian angel for everyone, right? It's not like Archangel Michael. Like the HGA is attached to you. The HGA is a spiritual being that is sort of part of you to some extent. But where it varies is it's still an external being, right? It's like a tethered being. It's like a spiritual double, but it's still a bit autonomous, and it is, inherently more holy than you. So like you don't get like a shaitan HGA. Like you don't get like an unholy HGA who makes you worse, right? Your HGA does want to make you better. So it is an external spirit, but it's an external spirit that's sort of attached to you. So in a sense, it is part of your spiritual body, but at the same time, it's not, because your HGA has information you don't have. The HGA has secret information you don't have, secret information about your true will. And we do all these crazy rituals to connect to the HGA. If we already knew our true will and the HGA did not have something that we didn't have, we would not do the HGA rituals. The HGA rituals, there's the Abra Melon, there's the Bornless ritual. Essentially, there's a bunch of rituals that all follow this structure of you purify for a long time and then you invoke a ton. Basically, like you purify, you abstain from intoxicants of miasma, and then you start invoking it. Now, there is another method some people do where you like vice max and then you just let your HGA like rescue you. Don't do that. That's not a good method. But yeah, so if we already knew our true will and everything was entirely internal, why in the world are we contacting our HGA? Like that's a really elaborate self-psychology exercise. But yes, so the HGA is divine and higher sort of in its nature than us. But I do think it's worth exploring, other aspects of the will. So true will is this like life purpose and flow state, right? True will is often compared by thelemites to the Tao, because the true will is something you live in alignment with, in constant alignment with. It's something that you kind of truly attach to. Like this is a big thing that I think people also don't realize is the true will is not just an answer to a question. Like it's not like you do the Holy Guardian Angel work and then your HGA tells you, okay, well, your true will is to open a hair salon. Like your true will is that, but it's also everything else within your life. So every single moment, you're supposed to be in alignment with your true will. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law means that you at all times, in every moment, in every second, should be aligned with your true will. And that's a really hard task. That includes, your true will includes drinking water. It includes eating healthy. It includes taking care of your body. It includes avoiding things that hurt you. It includes abstaining from absolutely everything that blocks you from the great work, because the true will's goal is to get you to do the great work. So the true will thing is actually really restrictive. And one thing that I find really fascinating, and I'm going to pull up the exact like phrasing for it, is there's a exercise that you have to do it in groups. So I don't really do this exercise particularly often because I'm solitary, but it's basically, I've done it with a group, and I have, there is a modified version I wrote for the individual. If you guys like, I can release modified saying will for the individual if you guys would like it. And I love this exercise. So saying will, it's a short ritual that basically thelemites do before they eat. Now, I will say very few thelemites do it before they eat every single time. You'd have to like live with another thelemite or do like an individual version, which are all modified. But I would like to read this text out because I think this helps people really understand like the scope of true will, and that true will is not just like an answer to a question. So knock 3, 1, 2, 3. Knock 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know if you guys can hear my knocking. If you can't, I'm sorry. Knock 3, 1, 2, 3. So 3, 5, 3. Then the leader says, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Everyone else says back, or one other person says back. Depends on how many people are hanging out with you. So what is thy will? Leader, it is my will to eat and to drink. All to what end? Leader, that I may fortify my body thereby. All to what end? Leader, that I may accomplish the great work. All, love is the law, love under will. You knock once, fall two. There are other versions of this. People have rewritten this a number of times, but think about what this is implying. This is implying that even when you eat and drink, you are following your true will. And you have to eat and drink in a way that fortifies your body. So that means that like eating like an entire like pack of those crumble cookies that are like 700 calories each would not qualify, right? You shouldn't do that. That's not good for you. Or like, avoiding eating. Like if you undereat, say you have like anorexia or something, like that would be contrary to your true will. And you'll be defying your true will every single time you did a behavior that was not fortifying your body, fortifying you with water. If you're someone who likes to have like 3 black coffees, no lunch, and then you post that like horse meme of like how it feels to have 3 black coffees, no lunch, it's funny. We've all had that moment, but like that's not following your will. Like if you have 3 black coffees, no lunch, you are defying your true will, right? Even in that simple form of eating. And that applies to everything. Like when you go somewhere, you need to think, is this my true will? When you go to a party, is it a place where you're following your true will? Like, are you having like revelry and fun with your friends? Or is it a place where you're going to do toxic things that are bad for you? You know what I'm saying? Like you need to be thinking about it all the time. And that is why you have to do all this crazy stuff to discover your true will, because discovering your true will is not answering a question. Your HGA does not just give you an answer. It's literally realigning your entire life around true will. True will is a lifestyle more than it is anything else. It's an entire way of being. It's a state of being. And so all this HGA prep work, right? It's also to help you align with your true will and get closer to it. And if there was no divine nature or true will, like it would be a little silly. Now, I do want to talk about ways that we connect with our true will besides this higher form, because obviously there's true will, there's like other forms of will. I know that pure will was kind of an earlier concept that's very similar. You have other philosophers talk about the will. So I've had a really interesting thing. I read it. I don't know where. I wish I knew where this quote was from, where it basically said, and it wasn't from an occult book, it was from a piece of fiction. I really wish I knew what it was from, where it said, survival instinct is the base form of the will. And that was like a quote in a novel, essentially. But that's really correct. Survival instinct is the base form of the will. And so I want to explore the survival instinct. So we all, our HGA, since it is bound to us, we all still naturally have some understanding of our true will. Like we don't understand the whole of it, we understand some of it. The desire to survive is obviously part of your true will. And so in a sense, exploring the survival instinct can help you understand your true will a little bit better. Because when we are under immense stress or immense fear, our true will and our will becomes a lot more clear and exact. And that's why, honestly, like this sounds really weird, but I have noticed a lot of spiritual growth and spiritual health when I do things that are kind of like, like I do like hiking and rock climbing and mountain biking. I've talked about that on Twitter a little bit. Like I'm very outdoorsy. When I do like those activities where I feel a little bit at risk, like I went bouldering a couple weeks ago, where like climb up the boulders on the side of the mountain. If I fell, like I would probably have ended up on the news and there would be no more podcasts. But like when you're in that moment. Okay, when you're bouldering on the side of a mountain, like you're very aware of your will. Like there's no question there. You know what I mean? You're not overthinking it. You're somewhat aware. And so in a sense, like those survival instinct moments can really teach us a lot about will. They can be very helpful. And I'm not saying everyone should get into bouldering, but I am saying maybe you do want to try mountain biking here and then, because you'll know your will when you feel like you're about to crash. And you'll suddenly, that's why people suddenly gain like more power, like when they're at risk. Like it's a good way to understand it. And so thinking about the survival instinct thing is really how it got me thinking about a bigger question that's kind of been my rumination of the week. And what prompted me to make this episode is, do animals have true will? So, okay, we know the survival instinct is clearly a little bit like a sliver into the power of the will. Like when I feel like I'm about to fall off the side of the mountain and then suddenly, I have a bit more endurance than I would otherwise. But it made me wonder, do animals have true will? And I opened up an entire conversation on Twitter about this. I talked to my roommate about this. I talked to my friend about this. And I talked about this on a Discord server. Like I talked about this with a lot of people this past week. I've had a lot of conversation about it where I asked people their thoughts on like, do animals have true will? And it opened up such an interesting sort of discussion, because kind of, a lot of people were saying like, oh, they're stupid, like they're not intelligent enough. I mean, I have a pet rabbit, so I used my pet rabbit as an example. I was like, do you guys think my bunny has a true will? Some people were like, your bunny's stupid. Like, what do you mean your bunny does not have a true will? And she's smarter than people think, but you know what I mean? She's not going to be solving algebra problems anytime soon, to say the least. And I saw a really interesting argument. Someone made this on Discord. I feel like I can't cite names on Discord because, like, not everyone's like a public figure, but I'll just say someone on Discord said that basically they made this really interesting argument where they were like, well, animals are actually better at our true will than us. Like the dog knows how to be a dog, like the cat knows how to be a cat. Only humans don't know how to be a human, right? We are unique in being detached from our will. And, I think that's quite possible. I think, in a sense, the animals already know their true will. They don't need to contact their HGA. And if you think about it, like, animals are very spiritually responsive. Like, animals act up on the full moon. Trust me, I know there was a full moon the night before I recorded this episode, and my pet rabbit destroyed her bed. And I was very sad because it was very cute, right? Like, animals are very intuitive. They act up on eclipses, like they're very responsive. And it's known that elephants even circle under the full moon. And so, it makes you kind of explore, like basically the higher intelligence a creature is, maybe true will becomes harder. Like, maybe the less intelligent something or someone is, like, the better they are at will, in an ironic sense. Like, maybe they're living more in alignment than us. And then someone pointed out that Aleister Crowley himself actually argued that true will, it's not just this metaphysical thing that we discover. It's not just this self-actualization journey. It's actually a law of nature. And that sort of cleared things for me. Like, that cleared things up. It was like, the camera lens like switched to being in focus, because true will is a divine principle because it's a law of nature, and humans uniquely struggle with following the laws of nature. You can see that in so many of our behaviors, right? You can see that in so many things in our reality. We do struggle with the laws of nature. We struggle with being a human to such a high extent. And so, in a sense, true will, when we do all this, we're reuniting with nature. And that's why connection with nature is also such a powerful spiritual tool. People who are more connected to nature have more satisfying lives, and they have more spiritual growth. Like, if you are in the pagan space in any capacity, you'll know the emphasis that people put on to connecting to the land, connecting to the land spirits. And in a sense, when we do all this elaborate work to discover our true will, we are getting closer to nature. We are aligning with the natural law of this universe, and we are detaching from these sort of created, falsified laws that the mundane material world, we have sort of falsely imposed upon it. True will is in a sense, reconnecting with our nature that we are detached from. And it got me thinking about Buddhist ideas. So the Buddhists constantly say that we live in states of delusions and illusions. Like, we are filled with delusions. We're disconnected from the truth. The truth is veiled from us. And that really is the reality of true will. The true will, like, that also explains the survival instinct thing, right? Like, the dog knows how to be a dog because they're not overthinking. Like, when you are falling off the side of a mountain because you're rock climbing on a cliff face, you know your true will. No question there. But when we get into our material lives and we fill ourselves with simulacra and distractions and nonsense, when we brain rot and we watch like TikTok videos of the ooh ee ah cat, like, we are getting detached from our true will. And when we connect to our nature, we are closer to our true will. And we do all this spiritual work, we're sort of ripping the blinds off of us, and we're reconnecting with the fundamental laws of nature. And so true will is a divine truth that we have to do all this work to discover, because humans struggle with true will. Humans are bad at true will. And even when we know our true will, we tend to fall off it a bit. Like, I think this is something people don't talk about in Thelema enough, right? When you discover your true will and when you start living in alignment with it, it doesn't mean you're going to be like that for the rest of your life. True will is basically like constant conscious effort. That's why things like saying will are so good. And that's really like why I recommend people do Liber Resh. So Liber Resh is this like daily solar invocation thing where you invoke the sun a number of times during the day. The reason why I think Liber Resh is good is not the ritual itself. The ritual itself is lovely, to be clear, but it's because it constantly keeps you thinking about your true will throughout your day. A lot of people like segment their spiritual practice into one portion of their day, like right before they go to bed, right when they wake up, like when they do their big daily rituals, they're like, okay, well, this is my spirituality time. You need to realize that you are always having a spiritual experience. There is no separation ever. You are constantly in a spiritual state, and things like Liber Resh that disrupt your day on purpose remind you of that and keep you constantly living in alignment with your true will. You are at some point going to defy your true will. It is inevitable. And it is reality. I have done it, okay? I'm like a public Thelema figure, and I have had whole chapters of my life where I have known I am defying my true will, and I've done it anyways because of whatever motivation. Maybe I was traumatized by something, maybe I was under a lot of stress, maybe I just, didn't care. Maybe I was spiritually detached. Like, we all have periods where we are not going to follow our true will and where we are going to defy it. And what's going to happen during those periods? We're going to stagnate, we're going to devolve, and we're going to move backwards, and we're going to feel like shit. When I critically evaluate my entire life, every period where I've been defying my true will, even in a little bit, even slightly, even if it's just because I've not been 100% taking care of myself every single day, that erodes and that takes me away from the great work, and it slows things down and it puts those blinders back up. A lot of people think if you've done an initiation, you've like made permanent spiritual progress. You can regress just as easily as you can progress. True will is constant conscious effort. Remember, willpower. You need to have willpower to stay in line with your true will forever. It needs to constantly be something you're thinking about. And the thing is, once you're in alignment with it, it's actually not that hard to maintain. It's basically like a flow state that you fall into and it feels natural. But when you fall out of it, it's a lot of effort to get back into it. You have to redo some of these journeys. You have to kind of retrace your past steps, and eventually you will get there. And humans kind of struggle with that. One way that people often get back on the track is through ego death. I think ego deaths are a big part of the true will journey. I think most people, when they're living not in line with their true will, they basically need to blow up their life, right? They need to die and be reborn. Everything is constantly going through a life, death, rebirth cycle. And in a lot of cases, basically what you have to do to follow your true will, and this is true even for people who followed their true will in the past and then lost the track and have to get back on, is die. Not literally, of course. I'm not encouraging like suicide or like dying. Like obviously not. I mean metaphorically die, right? Sometimes you do have to blow up your life. And I've done it. I've had to do it myself, and it really does help. True will is a continuous journey, okay? I could make myself seem like such a better, and more wise person to listen to if I lied and said that like I discovered my true will one time and then never struggled with it. That's not reality. I don't trust anyone who would say that, though. To be completely honest, like true will is a constant state of discovery, a constant state of work. It's something you're going to always have to be working towards. You're always going to have to be contact your HGA. The HGA thing also, I think a lot of people think of it as like a milestone you do once and you're done. I think so many people have like gamified spiritual progress where it's like you just hit these checkpoints and then you're good. Like it's like checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, checkpoint 3, and that's not how you should view it. Spirituality is a constant evolution. Once you get knowledge and conversation, you don't stop having knowledge and conversation. You keep invoking, you keep purifying, like you keep doing the work. Of course, not in the same way as like doing like a preliminary purification period before your HGA. Like you don't need to follow all those rules again, obviously, but you still need to keep up that work. I mean, even if you've made great spiritual progress in the past, I mean, it's possible to throw yourself off or, try out some new practice that's not aligned with your true will and that kind of set you back a little bit. Like it's a constant state of work, and it's something we all struggle with. And, inevitably you're going to find it, you're going to fall off, you're going to find it, you're going to fall off, and eventually you're going to stop falling off. And that's when you've truly found it, right? Like when you've beaten that entire struggle phase and you're getting closer and closer. And even then after that, there's crossing the abyss, like there's struggles, right? The spiritual journey is not easy. True will is easier than not following your true will, but following your true will is still hard, right? I think the best way to put this is true will is the path of least resistance. I wrote a Substack essay called that. True will is the path of least resistance. And that's how I feel about it. I feel like it's a hard thing to do, but at the end of the day, it is the less hard thing to do. Life is fundamentally hard. Life is not easy. Being a human is not easy. This is why I sometimes envy my rabbit, like genuinely, like it's they don't have these questions. They don't have these doubts. They don't have these ruminations. They don't have these neuroticisms that we all have, these flaws that we deal with fundamentally. But eventually you get there. A good way to check if your true will is your true will. So this is a question I'm asked, is like people will be like, okay, well, I've made knowledge and conversation with my holy guardian angel before, and now I'm not sure, like, is this my true will? Like, how do I know? The question you need to ask yourself to test if you are following your true will is, will this eventually lead me to the great work? And you need to really sit with that and ask that critically. Like, not just like journal on it for a minute, like really sit with that. Like, where is this leading? Where is my life leading me to? Is this something I can sustain forever? Is this something that's, serving my goal to annihilate into the Godhead? How do I even feel about that, right? If it's not leading to the great work, it's not your true will. A lot of people can get confused and think their true will is something it's not. If it's not leading to that, it's not your true will. If you are avoiding, thinking about that question because you're worried the answer is no, then you need to think about that, right? Sometimes your true will is going to be upsetting in the way that it will make you change your life or leave behind things you think are serving you, right? A big part of true will is actually release and mourning the things you need to give up in order to have your true will. Right? True will is releasing so much because you likely, before you go on your true will journey, have things in your life that do not follow your true will. You might have a toxic friend who is hurting you, but you still care about, right? You might have some job that is giving you financial benefit, but isn't serving your highest interest. It's actually blocking you from spiritual growth. It's actually corrupting your soul, but you need to release that, right? Like there's a lot of release with true will. And people talk about true will as like this really happy and fun thing all the time, but they don't explore, I think a lot of true will is actually mourning the things you have to give up in order for to have a better life. Because it's so pronounced now too. Like society right now, I do think is fundamentally unhealthy. I think our modern way of life is contrary to how humans are meant to live. Like genuinely, like I think our world is basically like working against people. I think it's giving us all ADHD. I think it's making us all detached from nature. I think it's hurting us, right? I think people are alienated. I think people aren't leaving their bedrooms. I think people aren't forming human connections. Like people are really just like staying in their room all the time and not living their lives. And maybe that's me speaking from a Gen Z perspective, where so many people in my generation, they just watch TikToks all day, they just smoke weed all day, and they don't, have relationships. Like they're too scared to even like, flirt with someone. You know what I mean? Like they're terrified. They can hardly make a phone call. Like that's the reality of my generation. And I think that lifestyle is fundamentally opposed to the true will idea, because the true will idea wants you to live a life of vitality, of joy, of agape, of eros. Even you can't do that if you're living like a normal modern lifestyle as well. Like even with our food, like so much of the food we have like does not fortify our bodies. Like it hurts us. Like our modern like diet like definitely makes people sick. Like so many things in our world, I think, are working against our true will. And to give up those things, to release those things, that's really hard. To live a genuinely healthy and spiritually fulfilling life, that's really hard. It's a lot of mourning, it's a lot of release. Like true will comes with a lot of weight. And maybe that was less true in the past. I don't really know. I mean, even then, like the Victorian era, I mean, people had a lot of problems. I wouldn't go so far to say that was a better time to live. Probably not. I mean, you probably get like tuberculosis at like age 12 and just die. But you know what I mean? We live in a time that's hard. You know what I mean? And true will is a journey that entails a lot of release, a lot of death, a lot of letting go. Will is not want, is not some like catchy expression. Like it implies a lot. There's a lot you have to give up. Um, so yeah, true will versus willpower is something I wrote here. I mean, willpower just kind of gets you to true will. Willpower isn't always serving true will. So willpower obviously comes from the will, but sometimes people misdirect it in weird ways. Like sometimes, you can use your willpower to not accomplish your true will. If you use your willpower to accomplish your true will, that's very, very helpful. The next thing I wrote down is, what if two people's true wills conflict each other? There's been a lot of thelemic discourse kind of to this point. Like what if two people have true wills that both cannot be accomplished? This tends to come up in scenarios like, actually like unhealthy scenarios. Like I've seen this brought up with like, what if one person's true wills date the other and the other one isn't? Like I don't know why that's even a question. Actually, I don't know why that's even a scenario anyone has ever thought of, because what the hell? Like what the hell type of scenario is that? Like, well, it's my true will to date her and it's not her true will to date me. Like that's like esoteric incelism. Like I'm not even gonna like explore that type of scenario, because like that's creepy. Like your true will is not to like date someone whose true will isn't to date you. Like your true will is not to be like a sex pest. Like I'm sorry, like what? I can't believe there's been whole essays written about that. Like not trying to like shit on people who have written whole essays about that, because I've seen that rhetoric so many times, but that's a stupid conversation. Like no. If someone doesn't want to be with you, like there's no like soul compatibility. So silly question, but I do think it becomes a little more relevant in scenarios that people aren't as interested in, like scenarios of like, well, what if, one person's true will is to do something and that other person is blocking their true will, and to follow their true will, they have to block their, like, I feel like it's more like let's say, I'm trying to think of a good like example. Like let's say person A's true will is to move, like part of person A's true will, because obviously true will is a big thing. It's not just these statements. Like part of person A's true will is to move. Person B, their true will is like for their company to succeed, or part of their true will is for the company to succeed. Obviously, it's not entirely that. Your true will is not just like materialistic growth, but it does sometimes include things like that. And person A is like really important for person B's success. I don't think your true will can impose on other people's true will. Like true wills cannot override each other. If your true will is for your company to succeed, and if person, B, God, I don't remember who was person A and person B. I said the society is giving everyone ADHD, and perhaps I'm the prime example of that. I have like TikTok Zoomer brain sometimes. But let's say, you can't stop the person from moving. You can't violate their autonomy, because your true will be better if they work for you. Like you just need to find someone else. Like a lot of these like weird, like contradictory scenarios, like the answer is just, you need to find someone else. Like your true will cannot override someone else's. Your true will cannot require you to harm other people as well. Like that comes up sometimes. Like, what if my true will is to like stab someone on the street? Like, first of all, what? That's another like what scenario. Like, what do you even mean? Like your true will is to stab someone? So let's explore that too. Let's talk about what if my true will is to stab someone. Okay, so I actually, you know what? I'm gonna really play with this. Let's talk about the context of that. So, not all people, getting stabbed are of equal moral, badness. Okay. So let's say you want to kill your landlord, you want to stab your landlord because you dislike her. Okay. That's not your true will. That's not okay. That's immoral. That's does not no. Because how is that ever going to serve the great work? What do you mean? Like that's not going to serve the great work. That's inherently a bad action. That's a selfish action. And if you do that, you're not going to be able to follow your true will because you're going to go to prison and you're going to get fried on the electric chair. Now, okay, let's run a different scenario. So you are in a back alley and someone's robbing you, and to survive, you need to get away the person who's robbing you. And the only way to stop them from robbing you, and also they might murder you if they're robbing. Like, just basically say you're getting attacked in a back alley. Let's make this robbed as maybe too weak. Like, let's say you're getting attacked in a back alley, and this person's gonna hurt you, but you have to, you can, you have a gun in your purse, and if you shoot them, like you'll be fine, and then you'll be able to follow your true will and accomplish great work. In that case, I do think it would be justified, according to your true will, to shoot that person. Okay, if it's a self-defense thing, I don't think that contradicts your true will. So I think it just depends on the scenario. I don't think like deliberately violating people's will and autonomy for no reason is ever going to be your true will. But I do think there's scenarios where maybe you do have to do bad things or messed up things in order to follow your true will. Because once again, true will is everything at every moment. And sometimes we do have to do rough things like defend ourselves and protect ourselves where situations like that might kind of go there. I kind of think a good rule is like your true will ends when others begin. Like if you've gotten to the point where you're trying to overstep other people or trample on other people or like really exploit and take advantage of other people, like you're not really following your true will at that point. You know what I'm saying? The next thing is true will permanent or does it change? True will is a constant flow state, right? Your true will is impermanent in that you always need to follow it, but it's permanent in that it always exists. So your true will is just your destiny, right? So it's always going to be there and it's always going to be evolving. It's not like you like complete your true will and it's like a milestone that you've like checked off. Like it's not like you've ever done true will. You've never completed true will. You've never finished doing your true will. Like you're never done. Your true will is always happening. Now another question I started asking myself is true will about surrender or control? So I've said a lot that true will is a flow state that you discover from the divine. And for that reason, I actually think true will is about surrender. So many people think true will is about having radical control and autonomy over your life, right? Complete control over everything. And the thing is, if you have complete control over everything, you don't have control because control cannot exist without surrender. Control and surrender exist in a polarity where they must exist together for one to even exist. If you control everything, you don't really have control because you are being controlled by control. You are controlled by the concept of control. So you need to know when to control and when to surrender. In our lives, to follow our true will, we do have to take control. We do have to have agency, right? So many people in life want to pretend they don't have any agency. Like I think about like certain like mental health conditions is a really good example of this. People like to pretend that they have no control over their actions, right? No control over their choices, but you do have more control than you think. You have agency. And I actually think it's very counterproductive to people's recoveries and mental health to tell them they have no control over their behaviors. I think that basically makes them surrender and identify with the disease instead of fighting the disease, right? You have control and you need to exert control and agency over your life. But at the same time, you need to know to surrender, to trust that your true will exists, and to trust that even if your true will is kind of putting you in a questionable situation for the moment, it will lead to a better situation down the line, right? Finding this balance between surrender and control, I think, is a big part of true will. I have two more questions I wrote about true will. So the first of these two questions is, can you live in alignment with your true will without consciously understanding that you are following your true will? Like, can you like accidentally follow your true will? And I would say yes. I mean, we talked about how animals follow their true will, how true will is a law of nature. So I would say it is possible to follow your true without knowing what the concept of true will is. I mean, Crowley didn't invent true will. True will is a metaphysical truth, so it's always existed. I don't think you even need this language to understand what your true will is. I mean, you can think of it as anything you want. You can think of it as your pure will. You can even think about it as God's plan if you really want. If you want to get really, really transgressive there, be like the God's plan, not like God's plan as in Yahweh. This is not a Christian idea. But you know what I'm saying? Like you can think of true will however you want to think about it. You don't need to call it true will for it to exist. Things exist even when they're not called what they are. Like meditation exists even when it's not called meditation. Like there's a big TikTok trend where people are calling meditation raw dogging, which is of course very crass and vulgar and stupid, but it's still meditation. Even if people are discovering it and they don't know what meditation is, but they know what raw dogging is, like they're still meditating. You can live in alignment with your true will without knowing what the true will is. I mean, in a sense, like children kind of inherently live in alignment with their true will because they haven't developed the sort of thought concepts that adults have and our ability to do the wrong thing and self-sabotage that we have. I would say probably zero teenagers live in alignment with their true will, though, to be completely honest. I don't think a single teenager has ever followed their true will, or at least not very well. If you're a teenager listening to this, you gotta fix your teens, fix your demographic, teach them all about true will. Okay, now the final question is: do you need Thelema to live out your true will? No. I feel strongly no. I think Thelema is the best system of all your true will, but since true will predates Thelema, it's not inherently thelemic. You are kind of low-key a thelemite if you follow your true will, but you're not high-key a thelemite, like you might not adhere to all the first principles. I'd rather people follow their true will and believe in true will than believe in the whole of Thelema, to be completely honest. Like I'd rather people, be focused on their true will and the great work than like learning about like Nuit, Hadit, and Rahor, which I think is lovely. I mean, I'm a thelemite, okay? I'm not like knocking all of that. I'm not saying like don't read the book of the law, but I am saying true will is more important than any of that, to be completely honest. Like true will is way more important than memorizing Liber 777. And honestly, thelemites can sometimes go on weird side quests where they get more fixated on doing nonsense, like memorizing, every gematria calculation ever and like trying to like figure out the God code using Chat GPT, that they don't even like follow their true will. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I think true will is a very, very complicated situation. And I think, it takes time to discover it. And I think you could do it without Thelema. I mean, you could discover your true without doing HGA work. You could do other spiritual work and get there. Like the first ritual in the Greek magical papyri is like, it's called like the Rite of the Holy Daemon or Holy Daemon ritual. That's so bad. I don't know the actual name of it, but it's one of the first things in the PGM. And that process would get you your HGA. I mean, you don't ever need to do the Opera Melon. Like that's really unnecessary, to be completely honest. There's so many ways you could do it. I mean, you could do one of those Kareen rituals. And honestly, I don't think the Kareen is real, but I think the HGA is real. So that would probably work too. Like there's many ways to sort of get to the HGA and get to the true will that aren't exactly the thelemic steps. Do you know what I'm saying? Anyways, that's been the podcast. That's all I have to say today. If you have any other problems with true will, comment them below. Any other questions? I kind of want to do a follow-up to this where I explore like more problems with true will, where I talk more in depth about other possible problems that people may be struggling with that are blocking them from their true will. So if you have other problems with true will, other questions about what true will is, what it can be, like please comment them below. I'd love to do another episode. If you have like a better question or, honestly, like what's making you struggle? What's making you fall off your true will? Like please let me know. Thank you guys for listening. This podcast is supported through Patreon. If you join the Patreon, you get a pre-show alongside every single episode. You get 8 bonus episodes a year, and you get early access to every show. As well, I'm a professional tarot reader and astrologer. If you want to get a reading from me, information will be below. As well, I am Georgina Rose or Dot Darling on all social media platforms. That would be, Twitter /X, TikTok, Threads, and YouTube. That's my main platform. That's where I'm best. So you can watch YouTube videos of mine. And if you're listening to this podcast on YouTube, just click on my face. And yeah, I also have a Patreon for that too, where I write custom ritual guides every month, herbal preparations, and I do mentorship consultations. So I like talk to you about your spiritual practice and give you advice essentially in those calls. And yeah, so that's kind of all I do and where to find me. So thank you so much for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell. Or leave a review. If you're on Spotify, leave a review and a rating, unless it's a bad rating, in which case don't leave one. Anyways, have an amazing day, afternoon, mid-morning, mid-evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. This has been Pagan Perspectives by Georgina Rose, and thank you for listening.